Car-Toon, featuring Little Brrm.
Little Brrm was on his way to have a good wash and a polish at the local car wash, in readiness for a big occasion. He had entered the prettiest motor car competition at the motor show. There were going to be lots of other cars there, all sparkling and shiny. So if he was to be sure of winning, he had to look his very best. He arrived at the car wash just as Ronnie Railton was coming out. He did look good after his final polish.
"Hello, Ronnie,"
said Little Brrm.
"You're looking very smart today. Going somewhere nice?"
"Yes, I am," said Ronnie.
"I've entered myself in the prettiest motor car competition at the motor show tomorrow. Do you think I'll win?"
"Oh," Little Brrm was taken aback.
I'm entering in the same competition. We'll be competing against each other, won't we? But I don't suppose I'll stand much of a chance against you."
"Well," said Ronnie, "you never know. After wash and polish, you'll feel like a different car. So good luck to you, and may the best man win and all that.
I'll see you there."
And with that, Ronnie drove off. As he was being cleaned and polished, Little Brrm thought to himself,
"Even if Ronnie Railton is a very smart car, there's no reason why I shouldn't try."
When he saw himself in the mirror after he was finished, he thought Ronnie was right. He did feel like a different car because he looked so smart, and he might still stand a chance in the competition after all. It was morning, and Little Brrm was awake early to make sure he got to the competition on time. But as he looked out of the window, he got a terrible shock. It was raining, hard. He was very upset after all his trouble getting clean and shiny. He couldn't see how he was going to get to the motor show without getting wet and dirty. His hopes of winning the competition were quickly fading when he noticed a car going past with an umbrella up. It looked a bit funny, but it was keeping her fairly dry.
"I've got an umbrella somewhere,"
thought Little Brrm.
"I'll see if I can find it."
After searching for some time, he found the umbrella. But when he opened it, he was surprised to see how big it was.
"Oh, that's all right," he thought. "This will really keep the rain and mud off all of me."
So out in the rain he went with his umbrella. He set off for the motor show and started. He was all right for a while. The umbrella really did keep him nice and dry, except for his wheels, of course. Little Brrm was just getting used to driving with the umbrella over him when a wind started to blow. It got stronger and stronger. Little Brrm was having trouble staying on the road because the wind was getting so strong. All of a sudden, a particularly strong gust of wind lifted him right off the ground and up into the air. Up and up he went, and as the ground got further away, he wondered if he would ever get down again in one piece.
"Help! Somebody! Help!"
But there was nobody who could help him now.
"Oh!"
He looked up at the umbrella above him. It seemed quite safe. Maybe he was making a fuss about nothing. Looking down, he could see all the other cars and trucks. They looked like little toys. He'd never seen the world from this angle before, and it was a great thrill for him.
"Whoopee! I'm beginning to like this."
Little Brrm continued to go up and reached some white fluffy clouds. He went straight into them, and for a while he couldn't see a thing. It was like being in a mist. But when he came out the other side, it was sunny and the rain had stopped.
This is nice.
He thought, as he floated along in the warm sun. Beneath him was the fluffy blanket of clouds, and as he floated over them, he had an idea.
Well, as I am up here now, out of the rain, I suppose all I have to do is steer towards the motor show, and I shall get there clean and dry. But which is the right direction?
Without a road to guide him, he was lost. As he drifted along, he had a thought. He knew that ships and things could find their way in vast oceans by following the sun. So he thought he'd try that. He looked around at the sun, revved up his engine, and steered towards it, hoping for the best.
Oh, this is better than driving on the road,
he thought.
Maybe I shall go everywhere like this.
After travelling for a short while, he looked ahead and noticed in the distance a great big black cloud. It was a thunderstorm, and he was heading straight for it. As he got closer and closer to it, little Brrm became frightened. It was so menacing. But this was the direction he wanted to go in, and there was nothing he could do about it anyway. There was no turning back now. He would have to be brave and see what happened. The great cloud came closer and closer. Little Brrm closed his headlamps. Oh! All of a sudden, he was inside the cloud. There were thumps, crashes, bangs and flashes. Little Brrm was bumped, battered and thrown all over the place. He was in the middle of a violent thunderstorm, and he didn't like it very much, but he hung on. When at last he came out the other side of the cloud, he looked like a piece of rusty old junk. What a state! And to make matters worse, his umbrella was so damaged by the storm that it couldn't support him anymore, so he was losing height, fast. He fell to earth with a painful thump, which gave him a few more dents. As he recovered from the shock, he realized he had landed where the motor show was being held. Everybody was looking at him and sniggering. He was embarrassed.
Well, there's nothing here for me now, he thought. I'd better start back for home and forget about all this competition stuff.
The trumpets blew a fanfare, and the master of ceremonies started to call out the names of the winners of the competition.
My lords, ladies, and gentlemen, the winners are number 1, Lovely Lola, the prettiest car in the show, wins the star prize, a holiday in any car park of her choosing, and a lot of money. Winner number 2 for elegance, Ronnie Railton, who wins free washes for a year at his local car wash and not quite so much money. And finally, in the fancy dress section, Little Brrm, who wins a thorough service, a new umbrella, and a little bit of money.
Little Brrm didn't realize at first what the announcement was all about, but when he did, he could hardly believe his luck. He had won after all. What a thrill!
Whoopee!
The judges had mistaken his battered and untidy state for a fancy dress costume. They were so impressed that they'd awarded him the prize for the most original tramp outfit they'd ever seen. Little Brrm was so happy that he ordered drinks all round. Then, with lovely Lola and Ronnie, he led the big parade to the cheers of the delighted crowd. It was a wonderful end to a most exciting day, and one that he would always remember.
A Car-Toon. featuring Little Brrm.
It was such a lovely day that Little Brrm decided to go to the car park. There were quite a few parks near him, where all cars could go for a peaceful rest. The one he liked best was the multi-storey park in the centre of town, and the best place was on top. There he could get a good view of the town. As he stopped at the traffic lights, he noticed a very smart-looking garage. Little Brrm thought, "Oh, I'd love to live in a place like that." As he was thinking about it, the door of the garage opened, and out came an immaculate car. It was as smart as his garage, sleek and shiny. "Cool," thought Little Brrm. But he wasn't paying attention to the road. The traffic lights had changed to green, and he was holding up all the cars and trucks behind him. They were a bit put out with his lack of thought. He quickly drove off before they became really annoyed. As he continued on his way, he thought that one day he would have a garage like the one he just passed. Wouldn't it be lovely? I could invite all my friends around and really show off. He soon got to the car park, was about to get his ticket, when he realized he didn't have any money. "Oh dear, what can I do?" he thought. "I know. I can creep under the barrier and pay when I come here next time." So, being small, he managed to slip under the barrier and started his climb to the top. Up and round he went, until he reached the top. Then he went to his favourite place and settled down. "Oh, this is good," he thought, as he gazed across all the buildings in the town. His rest was interrupted by the sound of a car coming up behind him. When he saw who it was, he got a surprise. It was the smart car he'd seen coming out of the smart garage. "Excuse me, sir," he said. "I am the owner of this park. May I see your ticket, please?" Little Brrm was completely taken by surprise. Well," he stuttered. "You see, I didn't have any money, so I thought no one would mind if I came in and paid tomorrow." He was very embarrassed. "Yes, I've heard those tales before," said the smart car. "Come on, out you go, and if I catch you again, I'll call the police." Little Brrm was humiliated by this. The car just didn't believe his story, even though it was true. Little Brrm went home feeling very misunderstood. Next morning, Little Brrm thought he had better go down to the car park to pay and make up for yesterday. This time, he made sure he had enough money. When he got to the park, he bought a ticket and started up to the top. Up and round he went. When he got to the top, he looked for the smart car so that he could pay him for yesterday. But he was nowhere to be seen. So he just went to his favourite spot and looked at the view, as usual. But today, as he looked at the houses and things, he got a shock. He saw smoke coming from one of the buildings in the town. It looked as if it was on fire. "Help! Fire!" he shouted as he rushed out of the park to see if there was anything he could do. There's a fire in the town! There's a fire in the town!" Racing along, he passed a fire engine that had stopped. He thought it odd because this engine should have been trying to put the fire out. He went back to it and saw that it had broken down. "My engine won't go," said the fire engine. "Oh, that's terrible," thought Little Brrm. "What can I do? What can I do?" He panicked for a while. Then he had an idea. "I know. I'll see if I can give it a push." He got behind the vehicle and started to push with all his might. But it was no use. The fire engine wouldn't budge. It was much too heavy. And
little Brrm was not strong enough to move him. Then he had another idea. If I take all the equipment off the fire engine, I could try and fight the fire myself. So he took everything he thought might be needed. He then rushed off again in the direction of the fire, shouting as he went, "Fire! Fire! Out of the way!" He was so laden down with equipment that you could hardly see him beneath it all. He did all sorts of naughty things that he knew fire engines did, like going fast and going through traffic lights when they were red. But he was a fire engine now, and he had to get to the fire quickly if he was going to put it out. He finally arrived at the scene of the fire exhausted, but quickly as he could, he backed up to a hydrant so that the hose he was carrying could be attached. Then the water was turned on. Whoosh! The water came gushing out with tremendous force. The smoke billowed into the air as little Brrm held onto the hose with all his might. He kept the water spraying over the garage until the fire was out. Luckily, only a small part of the garage got burnt. And when little Brrm looked at it, he got a surprise. It was the smart garage, the home of the elegant car park owner. Little Brrm was tired out after using up all that energy and was resting when all of a sudden the smart car himself arrived, wanting to know who put the fire out for him. He got a big surprise when he saw that it was little Brrm. "Oh, thank you so much for saving my home," he said. "By the way, my name is Mr. Moretti. What's yours?" "Little Brrm. I'm glad I was able to help." "Oh, we were going to have a party this evening, so perhaps you would like to come around here tonight to celebrate with my wife and I, eh?" "Oh, yes, please," said little Brrm. He saw that Mr. Moretti hadn't recognized him as the car who got into his park without paying. On his way home, he thought he would visit the car wash so that he looked nice for the party. As he got there, who should be coming out but Ronnie Railton. "Oh, hello, Ronnie," said little Brrm. "I've just been invited to a party over at Mr. Moretti's place tonight." Mr. Moretti, eh? We are going up in the world, aren't we? You should be well looked after there. He always puts on a good show. Enjoy yourself." "Yes, I will," said little Brrm. That night, he had a wonderful time at the party. Mr. Moretti made a speech. "I would like to thank little Brrm for his courageous efforts in putting out this fire. He did a marvelous job, and we all appreciate it. Little Brrm will be receiving a reward quite soon, but I'm not going to tell him what it is. It will be a surprise. Good luck to you." Little Brrm was excited and curious. A reward? Fantastic! I wonder what it would be. He thought about it all the way home. Next morning, because it was still nice weather, he decided to go down to the park once again. When he got there, who should be waiting at the gate but the elegant Mr. Moretti, and he was there to present the reward to little Brrm. It was a free pass to all of the car parks. Little Brrm's face lit up. "Oh, thank you. I didn't really expect all this." "It is just a small gift to thank you for stopping my home from burning down, and I hope you enjoy it." Together, they both went up and round to the top of the park and over to little Brrm's favourite spot. As little Brrm looked out at his favourite scene, he thought that the free pass must be one of the best presents he had ever had. A car
featuring Little Brrm.
Little Brrm was in his garage, looking at all the cars and trucks going by. There were so many, all different shapes and colours. Just then, a group of very old cars passed by. They must have taken part in the old Crocs race, which happened every year around this time. The sight of these old cars reminded him of his grandfather, whom he hadn't seen for a long time. It gave him an idea. Why not go and visit Grandpa? It's a long way to travel, but if I start out early in the morning, it wouldn't be so bad. He decided there and then that he would go and see his grandfather. The sun was just creeping over the hill the following morning as Little Brrm started out on his journey. He made sure that he had everything he needed for the long trip ahead. He motored gently along, enjoying his journey on a nice sunny day. It was about noon when he reached the village where his grandfather lived, and, a little tired, he drove up to Grandpa's garage. He saw his grandfather outside, contentedly ticking over and enjoying a relaxing smoke. Little Brrm drove up to him. "Hello, Grandpa. How are you?" "Eh? What's that?" said his grandfather, who then looked up. "Oh, it's you, Alf. How are things?" "No, it's not. It's Little Brrm." "Little Brrm?" said his grandfather with excitement. Well, hello, my lad. Oh, it is good to see you. Well, I'm sorry I didn't recognize you. My lamps are a bit dim these days. I mistook you for an old friend of mine, Alfie Romero, who comes around to see me quite a bit. Company, you know. Well. Little Brrm, what a lovely surprise." "How are you?" asked Little Brrm. "Oh, not so bad. Cough and a splutter too, and some of me joints ache now and then, but nothing to worry about. Oh, do come in. You must be tired out after your long journey." They both went into the garage for some cool water and a chat about the old days, something his grandfather knew a lot about. Little Brrm settled down with his grandfather by the stove and waited for him to start talking about his favourite subject. "Grandfather," said Little Brrm, "would you tell me about one of your wartime adventures? They're always so exciting." Little Brrm loved to hear his grandfather's stories about when he was in the army and all the things that happened to him, and his grandfather got a lot of pleasure out of telling them. "Ah, the army, you say? Well, now let me think. After thinking for a while, his grandfather started. "Oh, yes, there was the time when I was in the Great War over in France. I was taking some very important secret plans of the war to General Headquarters. I was a major and on very special duty. The plans I was carrying were vital to us winning the war. All of a sudden, I was attacked by dive bombers. Vroom! Boom, 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 boom." Little Brrm was totally captivated by his grandfather's descriptions and was almost reliving the scene with him. His grandfather continued. "Oh, it was terrible. Explosions and bullets, noise and commotion. Oh, there was so much going on that I found it difficult to know where I was going. Anyway, I just kept on driving. I wasn't going to let a little thing like that stop me." Gradually, the bombing and the noise stopped, and "What happened then?" said Little Brrm, anxiously interrupting. Just a minute. Don't be in such a hurry. I'm going as fast as I can. Where was I? Oh, yes, I know. Well,
it became nice and peaceful once more, so I continued on my way. And after a short time, I realised that I was completely lost. For a while, I tried to find my bearings, going first one way and then the other, but I still didn't know where I was. What can I do now? I thought to myself. What would you have done? He said, looking at Little Brrm. Little Brrm couldn't think what he would have done in the same circumstances, so he just looked up at his grandfather with a blank stare. Well, this is what I did, continued his grandfather. I looked around for someone to ask, because I've always found that asking the way home when you're lost is the best thing to do. The only trouble was, there was nobody to ask. So I drove along until I found someone. Then in front of me, I saw a couple of trucks. I was just about to ask them the way, when I realised that they too were lost. They were arguing about which way to go. One wanted to go one way, and the other one wanted to go the other way. It seemed that I was the best person to take the initiative and choose. As I was a superior officer, this is what they expected, and so they agreed to follow me, thinking I might know the way back. Of course, I didn't know the way any more than they did. But the three of us travelled along together, going in all sorts of different directions. After a while, we came across a big tank and 3 other cars who were also lost. They too agreed to follow me, thinking I knew where I was going, but of course I didn't. As we travelled along, many other vehicles joined us. Guns, tanks, cars and trucks, until we became a convoy miles long. There must have been thousands of vehicles following me, thinking I knew the way, when I didn't. Anyway, it must have been my lucky day, because I eventually managed to find our general headquarters, and what a relief that was. But to my surprise, all the vehicles who had been following me were on the other side in the war, fighting against us. They were enemy vehicles, so they were all taken prisoner and not allowed to leave our headquarters. Well, with all those valuable vehicles taken away from them, the enemy couldn't carry on fighting, so they gave up, just like that. And that's how I won the war for our side and got this medal to prove it. Little Brrm looked down at the badge on his grandfather's bumper. "Car," he said. "That's a wonderful story." "Yeah, I suppose it is," said his grandfather. Little Brrm was really impressed with the exciting tale, and he lost all sense of time listening to it. He was brought back to reality when his grandfather started speaking again. "Although there was the time when we had to parachute behind the enemy lines in Burma, it was—"
"I'm sorry, Grandpa," interrupted Little Brrm, "but I don't have the time to hear another story. I shall have to start making for home soon. I do have a long way to go."
"Oh, very well," said his grandfather. "Well, it's a pity you have to go so soon, but I suppose you do have a long journey in front of you. But you will come and visit me again, won't you?" Little Brrm promised he would come and visit his grandfather, soon. They said goodbye to each other.
"Bye-bye, Grandpa,"
said Little Brrm. "Bye, lad," said his grandfather. "Come back soon." As Little Brrm drove back home, he couldn't help thinking how wonderful it must have been to have had all those marvellous experiences and to have led such an exciting life. He consoled himself with the thought that maybe his grandfather was exaggerating slightly, just to make the story more interesting. And perhaps most of his adventures were, well, just stories, and not really true. Little Brrm didn't mind at all if they were so. His grandfather gave him a lot of pleasure with his tales of adventure, which was all that really mattered. Little Brrm was happy. It had been a lovely day. Car-Toon, featuring Little Brrm. One day, Little Brrm was driving along when he saw a truck putting white lines down the middle of the road. The truck seemed quite happy. Little Brrm thought that it must be nice to be happy at your work, and that was the sort of job he could be happy doing. So he went over to the truck to ask.
Excuse me, but I'd like to have a go at your job. Do you think they would let me? Yes, I think so. Why don't you go down to the road maintenance department and see the foreman? He'll fix you up.
So he went along and asked the one in charge. To his surprise, the foreman car, Mr. Dash, said he would try him out. He gave Little Brrm a contraption that he had to pull along behind him and sent him to a stretch of road to do his first test. His first few lines were a bit uneven, but as he continued, he got better and better until he was doing the job perfectly, with the white line straight down the middle of the road. But the road was dead straight for miles, and after an hour or so, Little Brrm began to get bored. Suddenly, he saw something in the road up ahead. When he got closer, he could see it flashing, and when he got closer still, he realized that it was an enormous vehicle. Little Brrm was naturally rather frightened. As he stopped in front of the massive machine, he got an even greater shock. It started to speak.
I am a flying saucer, and I come from another world. My name is Sid. What's yours? My name is Little Brrm. I have come all the way from the planet Shtuk to ask somebody on planet Earth if they would like to have a tour of Shtuk as a friendly gesture. Would you like to come and visit my world? Will it take long? Because I've got this job to finish. Then I've got to get back for tea. Oh, no. It's not far. Only a couple of million light years. You'll be back in plenty of time for tea.
Little Brrm was doubtful, but how could he refuse a big spaceship like that? Anyway, it sounded terrifically exciting.
All right, he said. I'll come on one condition, that you let me sit up front with the driver.
As he spoke, there was a whirring sound, and a big door came down and provided a gangway into the brilliantly lit interior.
Come aboard, Little Brrm,
Sid's voice echoed. Little Brrm drove through the doorway and into the flying saucer. The door closed behind him.
I hope I've done the right thing,
he thought. He looked round at the strange interior. He was in the main control room and was given a special place where he could see everything. All of a sudden, there was a tremendous noise, and the whole ship started to shake. Little Brrm was now really frightened.
Don't worry, said Sid. We are just taking off.
The saucer started to rise. Little Brrm looked out of the window and saw the Earth getting smaller and smaller until he could see it no more. They were up among the stars. They passed by planets and moons and suns. It was a thrilling experience for Little Brrm. Then the vibrations returned.
We are now approaching the planet of Shtuk.
As the spaceship descended, he looked out of his window at some weird-looking buildings and some equally weird-looking vehicles. Then Little Brrm got a real shock. There, coming straight for them, was another spaceship. It came closer and closer until... crash! It hit Sid, who shook and vibrated with the impact. Little Brrm was amazed that they had survived such a collision. But the spaceship was reassuring.
Don't worry, it was only a minor hit, no problem.
The spaceship finally came to rest. Little Brrm was relieved to be on the ground again, safely. The whirring noise started again, and the great doors opened. Little Brrm drove out to meet some of the funny-looking cars who were waiting there. One of them spoke.
Hello, and welcome to Stuck. I am your guide. My name is Chaos, and I will show you around.
"Oh, thank you," said Little Brrm.
If you would like to follow us.
And with that, the group of strange cars led Little Brrm, in a rather haphazard fashion, out of the spaceport towards the main road. Little Brrm was shocked when he turned onto the broad highway. There was utter chaos. Cars were driving in all directions, bumping into each other, spinning around in circles, rolling over and over. It was total confusion.
This is terrible, he thought. Why don't they do something about it?
Chaos, the guide, apologized for the disorder. He said that on Stuck, they hadn't got much of a road system because they didn't know how to make it better.
We are very good at other things, but not on the road.
This gave Little Brrm an idea.
Would you mind if I showed you how to do it?
The guide and his friends looked at him with interest.
No, we don't mind. But what can a little car like you do to help? We've had this problem for years. You surely can't have the answer after just 10 minutes here.
Little Brrm plugged in his road lining machine with confidence and started painting lines down all the roads. At first, the space cars didn't understand why he was doing it. Then, after some elementary guidance from Little Brrm, they began to understand. They all formed orderly lines of traffic on either side of Little Brrm's white lines, and for the first time ever, enjoyed driving down their wide roads without trouble. No more scrapes and dents. They treated Little Brrm like a hero. His idea had made their planet a happier and safer place. They gave a special party in his honor, and he really enjoyed himself with the Stucks. The time went quickly by, and very soon Little Brrm had to leave for home. Everybody came along to see him off. As he drove towards Sid, something seemed to go wrong with his steering. He was going round in circles and all over the place. He couldn't control where he was going. Then, all of a sudden, he realized that he was back on Earth again. In fact, he had been dreaming. And when he looked round, there were white lines everywhere. They were going in all directions. He must have painted all these lines while he was asleep.
What can I do? He thought. The boss is going to be very angry with me for making all this mess.
He went back to explain what had happened. To Little Brrm's surprise, the boss wasn't at all angry.
This often happens when someone's painted a line down a long straight road. You just doze off. We get it all the time. Anyway, it was only your first day, wasn't it? If you'd like to come back tomorrow, you can have another go. That is, if you want to.
Little Brrm nodded, but he didn't really want to do that job anymore. He thought he'd study hard and try to be an astronaut. Then he might be able to visit all those planets up in the sky, the ones he'd seen in his dream.
That's my ambition now,
he thought, as he drove back home that evening.